Good morning. Welcome to our devotional this morning. We're currently in the devotional series To Love as Jesus Loved. We're looking this morning at the characteristic of love that is known as hopeth all things. In 1 Corinthians 13, we're told that charity hopeth all things. What does 1 Corinthians 13 mean when it says love or charity hopeth all things? It's the idea that if we love others, we're going to think the best of them, and we're going to see the best in them. You know, folks, in our life, when we're faced with any circumstance in life, we can either look at that with a, as they say, a glass half full or a glass half empty attitude. We can either try to see the good things happening to us in the midst of that circumstance in life, or we can major on the bad, difficult things in our life that this circumstance has brought upon us. It's all how you look at things. Well, the same holds true towards people as well. When we get to know people, we can either major on their fault, the faults they have, their shortcomings they have, the different times that they fail, or we can major on the times when they've been successful, and we can major on the good qualities they have, and we can think about the good qualities they have. Folks, that's a part of love. When we love people, we're going to think and see the best in them and of them. Stop and think about it. When we meet someone, and as we get to know them, what do we find ourselves thinking about the most when it comes to people? The bad things we see in them, or the things that are pleasing to the Lord that we see in them? That'll give us a pretty good gauge of how much we love that person. Our Lord gives us the perfect example of that in Luke 7. In Luke 7:36 through 50, we find the Lord giving us a great example of seeing the best in others. If you remember, this is a story about the woman with the alabaster box that comes to the Lord and washes his feet with her hair. If you remember here, let me just skip through a few of these verses here in Luke 7:36 through 50. When the Pharisees looked at this woman, here is what they saw. Listen to what's said. This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman that this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. See, the Pharisees couldn't understand how the Lord would allow her to touch him and how the Lord would allow her to wash his feet with her hair. They didn't understand how he would ever do that. And their argument is, well, she's a sinner. How could he ever have fellowship with her? How could he ever spend any time with her? How could he even let her touch him? Surely he would know she's a sinner. So that's the attitude they were coming from concerning this woman. They were majoring on, they were looking at this woman through the lens of her faults. She was a sinner, no doubt about that. And when they looked at her, that's what they were majoring on, seeing her as a sinner. How did the Lord look at her? Listen to what he says. Her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. The Lord acknowledges, yes, she's a sinner, all right, but you forget, she's been forgiven. And you know what that proof is that she's been forgiven? She loved much. The Lord, even though he acknowledges her shortcoming, he immediately takes the attention off her shortcoming and he puts it on her successes in life. She's forgiven and she loves much. Now, folks, we know both of those are act of God's grace in her life. Right? To be forgiven was an act of God's grace, forgiving her of sins that really she didn't deserve forgiveness of. And then for her to love much, that was an act of God's grace, granting her that love and allowing her then to exhibit that love in different areas of her life. That's all of God's grace. So what the Lord is saying is this. Yes, she has failed the Lord at times. She is a sinner. But look at how the Lord is working in her life. He's granted her forgiveness and brought her to a saving knowledge. And also, he has given her the ability to love and to display that in her life. Folks, that's the perfect example of seeing the good in people instead of the bad. I would like to ask you, as you go through your life today, folks, as you look at people, try to look at them from a good light. Try to pick out the good things about them, even though they may be irritating at times to get along with. It might be difficult to get along with them, but always remember, please, there's something good that can be found in anybody, especially those who are saved, because then you can see all sorts of ways the Lord is working in their life. But even for people who aren't saved, you can still see the Lord's grace shown to them in natural ways. Stop and think about it. If a person has health, and both lost and saved have health, that's an act of God's grace. If they're an intelligent person, that's an act of God's grace. If they're physically strong, that's an act of God's grace. You can major on all those things and see God at work even in the life of a lost person, but especially in the lives of saved people. As we concentrate on the good things in their life, as we concentrate on how we see the Lord working in their life, it's a wonderful thing to know that we love others, and that love helps us to see the best in others. Thank you for joining me this morning with this devotion.